Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Brick and Mortar Visibility. I am super excited for today's episode because it's kind of a bucket list. We have a guest on the podcast that influenced my life and has created my business to what it is today. Marcus Sheridan wrote the book, They Ask, You Answer. And I read that book about 5 years ago and was influenced by it greatly. I devoured it and I applied it into my business. And today we get to have Marcus on the podcast and share what he did in his business, how he grew his business and where he is now, but then how he takes his knowledge and helps other business owners, both brick and mortar and online business owners, all of us, to become the only option in town by answering the questions our future clients want to know. And he gives us some really great examples. He shows us what to do, tells us what to do. He dives deep. And that is honestly something I've always struggled with. When people say go deep with the answer, I struggle there in giving more information or what to give because I don't know. I'm a quick start. I get a little bit of information and I go. And creating great content, you want to go deep. And he gives some great examples, especially for us dance studio owners. But you can take this knowledge and apply it to any business. And I'm super excited for you all to learn. But as always, before we dive into today's podcast, your PSA is to grab your social post from the past week or something evergreen and bring it on over to your Google Business Profile. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to go grab my Google Business Profile workshop. This is the SEO foundation for your business to be found, liked, and trusted faster. It's about a 30-minute workshop, and then you take all the knowledge that I give you in that 30 minutes, and you're going to apply it and you're going to optimize your Google Business Profile so that you can be found first on Google. Of course, you're going to do more than just your Google Business Profile, but this is the foundational step in creating great SEO for your business. So go grab that by going to brickandmortarvisibility.com. and click the Work With Me tab. You'll see the free Google workshop. I have some other freebies there as well. Or click the link, of course, here in the bio. Now on to Marcus Sheridan. He is a globally recognized communication expert, best-selling author, and captivating keynote speaker specializing in transformational communication. With over 2 decades of industry experience, Marcus has mastered the art of connecting, engaging, and influencing individuals and organizations. His expertise spans the topics of sales, leadership, marketing, AI, personal development, and trust. Featured in renowned media outlets such as the New York Times and Forbes, Marcus solidifies his role as a trailblazer in communication. His clients include recognizable brands such as Whirlpool, Discover, Bass Pro Shops, Cisco, Microsoft, and many more. It is my complete privilege to have him on the podcast. And if you get anything out of it today, which I guarantee you will, I ask that you share this with your business bestie, share it out to your socials so more people hear it and know about it, and get his book, because his book has so helped my business and I know it can help yours if you have not read it. And check out the links below for all the goods of Brick and Mortar Visibility and what we have to offer. I would love to help you make your business the only option in town, and Marcus is here to share some tips, tools, and strategies in how to do that. All right, you guys, I'm super excited. Get ready. Enjoy this podcast with Marcus Sheridan.
Are you a brick and mortar business owner that has put your blood, sweat, and tears into creating a storefront that lights you up and serves your clients really well, only to be frustrated that you're the best kept secret in town? If you're not hearing your new clients say, "I found you on Google," then you are in the right place. Welcome. My name is Melissa Rose. I'm a mom, a brick and mortar business owner, and your straight shooting visibility coach. I've cracked the SEO code to becoming the top choice on Google in my industry. And now I'm sharing the secrets on this podcast. Get ready for stories, fail-proof strategies, and practical tips to elevate your brick and mortar presence to the top choice on Google. Let's get real, because we're going to make your business the only option in town.
Marcus Sheridan, thank you so much for being on the Brick and Mortar Visibility podcast. So great to have you here.
Yeah, Melissa, we're going to have a good time.
We are. I'm so excited. I want to start with my first little question. You say pain is such a great catalyst for innovation.
Yeah, for me, and this is for anybody, but I think every business owner, business leader, they have things inherently they know they should be doing, but they just hedge. And oftentimes we don't do the thing until we experience pain. So, like in my case, I started a swimming pool company in 2001. Things were going okay until the market crashed in 2008. So we were in pain, as were most swimming pool companies, thought we were going to go out of business. That's when I started to read about inbound marketing, content marketing, all that stuff. And as I was learning this new stuff, I was like, okay, so what you're telling me is I just need to obsess over my customers' questions, worries, issues, concerns, and I need to address them on my website. If I do that, I could potentially save my business. All right, I'm gonna send it. I'm gonna do it. And I did a bunch of things that I talked about, a bunch of things that had never been talked about in the industry, but I did it because I had nothing to lose. I was thinking, I'm gonna lose nothing to lose in the sense of I was already screwed in my mind. And so, hey, why don't we just send it? And so I actually didn't realize the things I was doing was that innovative, but I just had a fearless approach to discussing things in an industry that typically had never been discussed, which I later learned is pretty much the case for almost all industries, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's why this is such a catalyst. I always tell people that, if you want to become the voice of trust in your space, which is to me, like that's the goal, the most known and trusted voice in your market, in your space, you got to be willing to do four things. You got to be willing to talk about what others aren't willing to talk about online. Number two, you got to be willing to show what others aren't willing to show, especially through video online. Number three, you got to be willing to sell in a way that others aren't willing to sell. And number four, you got to be more human than others are willing to be. And, when I ask audiences, how many of you are truly talking about showing, selling, and being more human than 95% of your competitors right now, especially online, and you're doing it consistently? Nobody ever raises their hand if they're being self-aware and honest. And when you are saying, I might lose my company, that's when you do that. That's when innovation starts. And those are fun times.
Okay, so I want the cliff notes for everybody so people know who you are. I know who you are. I know your story. I've read your book, but give people the cliff notes of your journey of 2008 and now where you are.
Yeah, so 2008, I have the pool company, market collapses, and so my mindset was, all right, I'm going to become the best teacher in the world when it comes to fiberglass pools.
And it collapsed because the economy tanked and people were taking, and you had a pool business, so people are taking lines of credit out of their house. And so everything was a debacle with the 2008.
Real estate was a debacle. Everybody's upside down. They can't get loans, can't get a second mortgage, can't get a home equity line. That ain't good for home improvement. That's certainly not good for a swimming pool company. And so I really did think we were going to go out of business. I had multiple consultants say, you should go out of business. You should file bankruptcy, Marcus. That wasn't in the cards for me because I was going to lose my home. My two business partners had lost their homes. I had to let go of all my employees. I wasn't going to do that. So I had to get smarter. And that's when I really started to do the research. That's when I said, hey, we're going to become the Wikipedia of pools. And I can vividly remember I was just sat at my kitchen table one night and I wrote down every single question I'd ever been asked from a buyer, in my case about fiberglass swimming pools. And I had like a couple hundred questions written down. And over the next couple of years, I addressed every single one of them through text and video on our website. And it became the most trafficked swimming pool company in the world within a couple of years. And that just exploded the company. And from that, I started sharing my experience of how we were just crushing. That led to They Ask You Answer the book. It led to my agency, which is called Impact, which helps companies do They Ask You Answer. I mean, it's what we do is help them we guide them along this journey that is They Ask You Answer. It's been an amazing ride, and I became a full-time speaker along the way. So I've traveled the world now, teaching companies how to do this, helping them become that voice of trust in their space. And it's been a really wild journey, Melissa. I mean, it's really, really cool from pool guy to just seeing the world and getting paid to do it. It's hard to believe.
And what I appreciate about your story is the almost bankruptcy. As a brick and mortar business owner myself, there's the ups and downs. Going through COVID, I took out I literally was a small little Dolly Dinkle out of my basement, had a great thing going, and topped out that, and then went into a commercial space. So this is for those of you that are listening, don't know my story. January 2020, went into the commercial space, and life happened in 2020 March, and that's when it was actually right before that. I got divorced in 2016. And that's when I took the principles of your book and started creating a 90-second movie blog YouTube video on my business, and that propelled the business to grow. Then I had to do the commercial and blah blah blah. So just those ebbs and flows of ownership, as we all know. So you really you dove into all these questions. So, and that's what I took. I'm like, what questions are people asking, and how can I dive in more? And your big thing is trust, and how that's going to set us apart. Not set us apart, because we all want trust. You talk about that. We all want trust in our business. That's universal. So how do we get that trust and be human? That's the one I would like to dive into. Like, how do you be human and get people to trust you? How do you do it, Marcus?
Goes right back to those four things, which is you got to talk about what others aren't willing to talk about. Yeah, I mean, you do. And it sounds pretty basic, but let me give you an example. What we have found is that there's 5 subjects that everybody wants to know before they before they reach out to a company, before they buy something. We call it the Big 5. This literally runs the economy of search. And these 5 subjects are: buyers want to know, number 1, how much is it? Like cost pricing questions. They want to understand. Number 2, they want to know, what are the problems or the issues with it? What could go wrong? All right, it's number 2. They want to know, number 3, comparisons versus. How does it compare to this other thing that I'm looking at? Number 4, they want to know reviews. What's everybody saying about it? But they don't just want the positive reviews. They want the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then finally, number 5, they want to know the best, most. I mean, think about how many times you've gone online and you search best plus another phrase or something similar to that. So cost, problems, comparisons, reviews, and best. That's the Big 5. That's what buyers want to know. Yet businesses, they don't want to talk about these things. And because of that, you have a paradox of wants, right? And so if you're willing to talk about them, if you're willing to show them, now you're going to stand apart. Let me give you an example. Let's look at comparisons for a second, right? Yeah. You take any brick and mortar business that's selling something, and there's competing products in other brick and mortar businesses. How many of those have you compared openly online? How many have you just talked about? Apples to apples, let's really look at these. What are the pros and the cons to each? That's the type of thing that you should be doing. For example, at one point I had a couple brick and mortar locations until I just went all in on fiberglass pools. So I used to sell hot tubs, I used to sell tanning beds, I used to sell all this stuff. This is before I knew they ask you answer. If I had done the ask you answer before, I probably would have never have stopped doing brick and mortar because it crushes. So you take a hot tub, for example, right? In the hot tub space, you've got all these brands. People are constantly comparing things like hot springs versus a jacuzzi hot tub, which is best, right? Notice I did 2 things there. That was a comparison and a best, right? That's the way the market is researching. But do you know how many hot springs dealers openly talk about jacuzzi and compare their tubs to jacuzzi online, on social? Like 1%. That's not okay.
So you're saying to literally call out the other brand?
Yes.
All right.
Heck yeah, because that's what they want to know. That's why it's called They Ask, You Answer. Because if they're thinking it, they want to know it. Do you know how many times somebody's walked into, and again, we'll use hot tubs because it's easy, hot tub location and said, if it was hot springs, they were looking at a hot springs, they said, yeah, I'm also looking at jacuzzi. Most everyone that's looking at a hot springs, looking at jacuzzi because they're perfectly comparable brands. They're like the top end of the hot tub space. So everybody's comparing them. They don't want to talk about it. So I can't imagine allowing the marketplace to get their answers from somebody other than myself. That to me is appalling. I don't want you going to Angie's List. I don't want you going to some third-party site where they may or may not have a clue. I want you to learn it from somebody that's actually been there, done that, right? So this type of thing is prolific. And the Big 5 apply to every single product you sell in brick and mortar, like every single one. I've got one of the great freaking examples of all time. There's a company called Yale Appliance. Yale Appliance is a Boston retailer. They sell kitchen appliances. Okay, fridges, dishwashers, all that jazz. They came to me and they're like, Marcus, we want to crush, but we're not. And we feel like we're producing content, but it's just not really happening. I'm like, okay, let's look at your content. The content wasn't what people wanted to know. They really were just mainly pitching their products. But what do people want to know in retail, right? Well, what they want to do is they want to compare stuff. They want to read reviews about it, etc. So they did some of the ballsiest stuff I've ever seen from a retailer. Let me tell you something that'll blow your mind, Melissa.
Please do.
And anybody that's listening to this, because this is like awesome story. So one of the questions, because everything starts with the questions you receive, right? That is your ultimate content strategy. So, for example, one of the questions that the owner, Steve, would always get, people would walk in, they're looking at appliances, they want to redo all their appliances or get new ones, and they say, what are your least serviced appliances? Like, which ones break down the most? You've got like 8 brands in here. Which ones break down the most? Okay, now, most retailers are going to give some BS answer. Be like, well, it depends, and they're never going to talk about it. Why? Because they don't want to ruffle any feathers with the supplier, with the manufacturer. Steve says, I'm going to own this industry. So he produces a piece of content, and it was the least serviced, most reliable appliance brands. He started this, I think it was in like 2019, right? And here's what he did. This is wild, Melissa. He took all the service calls that he had run that year for every single service call, every single brand. So he took the total number of units he has sold for each one of his brands. So you got Bosch, Whirlpool, GE, went down the list. And he took the total service calls he'd ran on each. And he figured out the exact percentage of service calls that he would have to run for every single brand that year. And then he published the list on his dang website. So not only did you learn the least service brand that he sells, drum roll, coming, you learned the most serviced brand that he sells. Think about that, which I believe was KitchenAid. So if you're listening, KitchenAid, you got to do better. Now.
And he put it in a beautiful graphic and made it all pretty and very interesting to read. And
check it out. Its first year, it was getting read 50,000 times a month. 50,000 times a month. Think about that. True story, too. Second part to the story. There's many parts of the story I could tell you. And this made him millions, by the way. As a brick and mortar business selling appliances, most of those folks are complaining that Amazon's putting them out of business or this or that. He's crushing. He is crushing because he's doing it differently. But he's more bold than anybody in space. He's talking about what others aren't willing to talk about. He's showing what others aren't willing to show. That was crazy. Now, by the way, let me tell you 2 stories. How did the brands react? Well, the ones that were at the bottom of the list were upset and were like, how could you do this? And his point was, I guess you're going to have to make a better product, won't you? They couldn't do anything. Most retailers would never do that because they care more about, I don't want to annoy the vendor than upsetting the consumer, the buyer. That's how he went from what was a medium size to a very large business, doing almost $200 million in appliance sales, which is a sick number, by the way, right? Other side to this story. He's featured in my book, They Ask You Answer, their whole story. My wife comes to me one time. We're in Virginia. Steve was in Boston, by the way. She comes to me and she says, I need to buy a new dishwasher. I'm like, yeah. She says, but I found the greatest website. You wouldn't believe it, Marcus. They talk about who they would buy, who they wouldn't buy, whose services. And I said, oh, yeah? What's the name of the company? She said, Yale Appliance. They're in Boston. I wish I could buy from them, but they don't do e-commerce, but they're just amazing. I said, honey, if you had actually read my book that hundreds of thousands of people have read, except you, my very own wife, you would know that they Ask You Answer. They're my client, dear. And she was like, well, True story.
Oh, that's a great story. That's a great story. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. So you talk about brick and mortar, which I am, but I'm service-based. So how can you give us an example of a service-based business and how they can do this or what they can do
So
better?
choose any service-based
Yep.
business, and I'll give you some examples. Just
Dance
choose
studio.
one.
Dance studio.
Dance studio. Perfect. So let's say you own a dance studio. So you might look at the big five and say, all right, we got cost. So we might do a series, and this could be in your area because whatever you have, let's say dance is variable. If you're in Hollywood, the cost is going to be different for a dance studio than it would be, let's say, in Oklahoma. And so you might take your town and you might say, what is the average cost for dance lessons in such and such town? So that's great because you're able to teach the market, here's what you could expect to spend. And you want to do this by saying, here's what drives cost up, here's what drives cost down, here's why some studios are more expensive, why some studios are less expensive. So you're really explaining value in the marketplace, helping them understand, okay, so I understand why some studios cost, $5,000 for, a half a year, whereas some cost $1,000 for a half a year. Here's the differences. Here's what to expect. This is what value looks like in the industry. And you're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's very, very helpful to me. So that's an example of it. Here's sometimes people have fears with dance studios. So in other words, if I send my child to a dance studio, and then fill in the blank for the fear. And you know those fears better than I do. Those are the problems, right? So you want to openly talk about those and just discuss them, right? And any of the fears. When I was a pool guy, the fears were like, oh, is this pool ugly? Is this a little cheap? Is it going to pop out of the ground? Like, I didn't shy away from any of those. You lean into them. So that's an example of it, right? Then you do comparisons. Well, some comparisons could be like, these days, you could do online lessons. So it's like, okay, should I do online or in-person lessons? What's the difference? But you want to do it in such a way it's like, not, hey, you're dumb if you go online and you don't offer online. Yeah. You shouldn't do that, right? It's like, listen, there's always pros and cons to every decision you make, right? And then you talk about it and they're able to say, oh, okay, all right, this makes total sense to me. Now, reviews and best are a real good one. So let's say you're in like Hudson, Wisconsin, right? So you might do an article or videos, etc., on like the 5 best dance studios in Hudson, Wisconsin, right? That's really, really powerful. And then you list 5. You literally list 5. And now all of a sudden, and by the way, you can do that and you can even like the 5 best dance studios in Hudson, Wisconsin, and then put in parentheses, review/ratings. And so now when somebody potentially searches your competitor and they search reviews plus competitor's name plus Hudson, Wisconsin, which is not uncommon, right? That's very possible. Now they're going to stumble onto your website. There's a good chance. So for example, like I wrote articles that were like the 5, best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia. I was naming my competitors on there. And at first I remember my business partners were like, dude, why are you naming our competitors? Because I'm like, I want to rank for their keywords and I want to crush for ours. And this is the question people are asking. And so they're not dumb. I'm going to just answer everything. You want to own every conversation that happens in your space. And so that's an example of reviews in a best for your geographical location. And it's really, really effective. A lot of these companies leave all this stuff up to third-party sites. I just think that's such a bad choice, Melissa. It's like, take the future into your own hands. Dictate your destiny. Don't wait around for it to come to you. Go after it. And so that means doing things that others just haven't done before.
Speaking of future, okay, so how are we quickly as we tie up our time here? How are buyers buying? And what advice would you give people, business owners? I'm top rated. I'm putting out consistent blogs. I'm doing the thing. What can I do more or better? What could I do better going forward?
Let me give you a few things. And let me just say this. Marketing is harder today than it was 10 years ago. It is. It's getting harder. This is true. At the same time, there are elements that are getting easier. Technology is getting better. Our phones are getting better. And it's actually a very exciting time You got to think a little bit creatively. Now, one thing that I would tell you, especially if you offer a service, which is a home run, is self-service on your website. What I mean by that is things like quizzes, assessment tools, recommendation tools, and pricing calculators on your website. So as an example, I created a tool that I'm very excited about. It's called priceguide.ai. What it does, it allows you to create in less than 30 minutes a pricing estimator tool that goes on your website, uses AI to make your life easier, and you can start generating leads literally in 30 minutes from this tool. It's awesome. So let's say in your case, Melissa, you might have an estimator tool on the site that says, how much will I spend on my children's dance lessons? Get an estimate here. And they're like, oh, this is cool. I can find this out right now. And so then what does the estimator do? Well, it takes them through a series of questions. Like maybe it's how many children, maybe it's what the different classes they would want to use or choose or whatever. No, it's different things like that. And questions that you would actually normally ask someone to give them a price range. And so at the end of this, they get a range, you get an email, and now you're building your database and you're getting a lead. And that lead you can remarket to, and then that's a game changer. So if you're listening to this right now, and you offer a service, you want a super cheap tool that you can set up immediately on your site, go to Price Guide. This is a new tool, but let me give you an example. I have somebody in Scotland reach out to me the other day. It's like, Marcus, I had a Price Guide literally on Friday. This is you and I are talking on, what is it, Monday or Tuesday? They added it on Friday. They got 23 leads in 2 days from a pricing calculator, and they sell sheds. They sell sheds. You know what I'm saying? Sheds. So point being is, any service you offer, you could use a pricing calculator, and it's gonna help people. So if you want more leads, it's a great way to do it. Self-service.
Awesome. Super
fun. Big element of the future. I think every service-based business is going to have some type of pricing estimator calculator on their website within the next 3 to 5 years. I think 100%. So don't wait around for your competitors to do it. Just do it. Just do it. Experience the leads. Experience the trust that comes from it, and win. That's what it's all about.
Very good. Okay. All right. So you're relaunching the book, yes?
Yeah. So this
Did I hear that right?
They Ask You Answer, the third version is coming out, but this time it's called Endless Customers. Actually.
Yeah. So why the upgrade? Tell us why quickly.
So this is just so everybody understands, and this might sound nerdy, but there is a best way to title a book, a webinar, a speech, in a way that you probably shouldn't do it. The Ask You Answer is great for people that have read the book and understand the principle.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it immediately makes sense. Well, here's what doesn't happen. You don't walk across a shelf, see something that says They Ask You Answer, and say, I have to have that. So the title test works like this. You want to be able to use the phrase, I want or I wish that, before the title itself. So I wish I could have a 4-hour work week. I wish I could win friends and influence people, right? See how it works? I wish I had atomic habits.
Yes. Okay.
See it? But nobody says, I wish. They ask, you answer. They say, I wish I had endless customers. So that's why.
Okay. All right. Noted. For great titles and hooks and all the things. There you go. Yeah. Pro tip. Thank you. Well, this was very good. I'm thank you for the personal coaching here for dance studios, because I specialize with dance studios, and this was gold for them. So thank you so much. And just a great book, everybody. So if you have not read it, it's a great marketing book that really has pivoted my business and made my business the only option in town. So Marcus, thank you for that. Thank you.
That's what's up there, Melissa. You go, girl.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, everybody. Marcus, any last words?
It's an exciting time to be in business. I would just say this: don't ignore AI. Get in the sandbox. Use it. It might not be your thing, but AI doesn't care about our opinions. So let's get in there. Let's start doing it. And you can create some amazing content with it right now, especially if you understand the right prompts. You can go to my LinkedIn. I have put a lot about AI in there, a lot about this stuff that Melissa and I have talked about today. Connect with me there if you're listening to this. I'm pretty good on that platform, and I think you'll get a lot of value.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Marcus. And everybody else, have a great week. We'll see you here, same time, same place next week. Peace. Bye-bye. Awesome.